Hi, this is session 5, and it is Thanksgiving. So, first off, I want to say happy Thanksgiving to everyone. And that is why our class is being recorded today. Now, just to let you know, our 5:30 to 7 o'clock slot had a lot of interaction and a lot of discussion. Since this is pre recorded and it's just me on the screen, it's going to take as long as it's going to take. So, um, sit back, relax, pay attention. And there are some quizzes in here that I want you to think about. But when we're done, we're done. So let's get started with session 5, written and verbal etiquette. All right, so we've covered a lot of material: first impressions, strategic business, networking, business dining last week, and now written and verbal. As we're working through our course map, we're trying to build on each other in order for us to have robust change in behavior. So the benefits for today is we're going to talk about the communication process. Now that could be a class in and of itself, hours of material, but we're going to spend about 15 minutes talking about the process. So we're going to dissect it. The second one is we're going to guide you through some business jargon and acronym etiquette because we all use it and sometimes we don't pay attention to the noise, which we'll talk about when we get into the program. The third thing is we're going to talk about our emails. Everybody does it. And so what is the proper protocols in using email as we communicate not only in personal, but in business? And then the last thing we're going to talk about is the use of our body, voice, and our words. And so how we actually pass the message along. So jam-packed day, let's go. Obviously, you don't have to worry about cameras, mics, asking questions. As a matter of fact, for asking questions, if you have any questions, when you go to start here in the campus Blackboard, you have my contact information as well as Marion's. Feel free to email us or text us and we will get back to you as soon as we can. The plan for today is to have fun. So as you're sitting there with your beverage of choice, you are hopefully having some fun as we go through this session. We're not going to have you participate now in the moment, but we will have you answer some questions. So if you can find a piece of paper and pencil, be ready to write some answers down. And then the most important thing to me is number 6, which is figure out something in here that you can apply to your life, something that will change your behavior, change your relationships, change the way you communicate. And if you can do that, at least one, then we have succeeded. Page. We are not using polls everywhere, even though there are 3 polls in here, because we are pre-recorded. So let's start. So our plan for today is we're going to talk about the communication strategy. We're going to talk writing. I don't know if you've ever heard of weasel words. So weasel words is an interesting discussion, and maybe when we move into session 6, we can spend a couple minutes talking about the use of weasel words. Email etiquette, verbal etiquette. We're going to wrap it up with what your discussion reflection question is and what your homework is. And then we will let you have your Thanksgiving meal. So there are 4 positive actions in this session. One is obviously communication strategy. And then how do we write? How do we use email? And then how do we actually say what we want to pass on? So as Marion and I've always talked about, we like to start with something that is, grounded. And this is Merriam-Webster's definition of communication. And I will read it to you. It is a process by which information is exchanged between individuals through a common system of symbols, signs, and behavior. So again, communication is just not one spoke. It is symbols, signs, and behavior. So first quiz, piece of paper and pencil ready. What are the most important steps that should be taken when forming any communication? Okay. The first one is identify your audience, what you want them to remember, and what they are interested in. 2 is be approachable, friendly, and communicate quickly. C is do a LinkedIn search on your audience. Or D, all of the above. And I know I went through that quickly. Hopefully you're reading the screen as I said it. So the answer to what are the most important steps that should be taken when forming any communication is D. And that means we should be prepared. We talked about preparation when we had our meeting session 3 on business networking, but we need to figure out who we're going to talk to. We have to look approachable and friendly. If you have the opportunity to do a LinkedIn search, you can get a plethora of information that can give you some nugget that you can actually incorporate in your discussions with these people. All right, communication, the art of finding the best possible means of persuading a specific audience in a specific situation to change either their point of view or to have them take action. Okay, so again, back to business networking. What is the purpose of getting together or meeting somebody new? Basic communication principles. We all do it. Now we're going to just dissect it. The first thing is that everything we do is communication. So the minute we walk in the door, like we talked in session 1, is communicating. How we carry ourselves, how we use our voice, how we get distracted by our phones, all those things is communication. The other thing is how we actually start our message will determine the outcome. There's been tons of research about it, is if we start the message with a negative tone or a negative comment, then most times than not, people have already set it up in their mind as to what the end result's going to be. The second or the third thing is how we deliver the message will always affect how it's received. Fourth one is the communication is not the message, is the message received, not the message intended. And what I mean by that is, in my mind, I know exactly what I want to say to you. I clearly defined it, said the words to you, and what you heard was not what I said. And so an important part is that the message intended has to be what you hear. And then we're going to talk about how do you actually make that happen. And then the last thing is communication is a two-way street. It's not me talking at you. Unfortunately, I'm talking at you now because we're pre-recorded, but typically it's not talking at somebody. It's actually the exchange of information. So again, 5 great points. To me, the most important one is know that everything we do is communication. All right, so there's 3 fundamental ways of communicating. The first one is face-to-face. The second one is the phone, and the third one is email. There are advantages and disadvantages of both. And if we were together in a room, we would talk about the pros and cons of each of them. The upside of face-to-face is that we had, I'm going to talk about it on a later slide, is we have an opportunity to actually use our muscles in our face, our smiles, our frowns, our shrugs, the entire picture of how we're passing on the message is easierly, is that the word? Is more easily interpreted. Phone, and we all have phone. The advantages of phone is obviously it's in the moment, but on a phone call, even though you may hear the intonation in a voice, you can't see somebody's face on the FaceTime. And then an email, obviously email is a communication form that you can write your thoughts down. So it even gives you a chance to think about what you want to say before you actually say it. So that's an advantage. The disadvantage is that it can be really misinterpreted. And of course, how we use our fonts, which we'll speak about later, is another piece of it. All right, there's a thing called noise, and it's a communication blocker. And there's lots of different types of noise. Probably the most, I'm looking around my room if I could make a noise. So one of the noises could be, I don't know if you can see this, but I've got my light going on and off and on and off. So if I had this going on throughout the time we were together, that's considered noise. Even though there's not a sound coming out of it, it's distracting you from focusing on me because you're paying attention to what that is. And so your mind starts to wander and wonder, why is it happening? What does it mean? And it's distracting you from listening and hearing what I truly have to say. So really noise is something that gets in the way of staying engaged in the moment. Another example of noise would be fire hydrant or fire engine going by, and you hear the noise. You can hear a child in another room if you're working from home, and you hear a big crash, and your mind is wondering what the heck they just got into. The dog barking at the front door. Um, you may be thinking, why is my dog barking? But the other person who's listening to you may be not able to stay focused because the dog noise is breaking in. So, and then one of the interesting ones that you really can't see is what's going on in my head. Okay, so let's just say you're watching this tape at 3 o'clock and you're going to be leaving the house at 3:30 to head over for your Thanksgiving meal. And so, as I stated at the very beginning, we're going to use whatever time it takes. If it's an hour and a half, if it's 20 minutes, we're done when we're done. And you're thinking, shoot, I'm leaving in 20 minutes. I don't want to have to do it again. So, in your head, you've got this rotation going on of thoughts. And that rotation is stopping you from really being engaged in the moment. As a matter of fact, a garbage truck just went by outside my window. So I don't know if you could hear that, but that's the noise that I'm hearing. Okay. So this is an interesting graph and it's been around for decades and it hasn't changed. Is that nonverbal is 55% of the communication that we have is nonverbal. So you don't even open your mouth and we're communicating. The other part that I thought was really interesting is the spoken word is a mere 7%. And then tone of voice. So the intonations, the punctuations, and how we say things is 38%. But the biggest piece of the pie is the nonverbal. So there are some communication strategies in order for us to be successful with communication. The first one is that we need to pay attention to how others prefer to communicate. Okay, and I have others emphasized because if I prefer to be face to face and you prefer to text me, if you really want to get your message across, you need to pay attention and deliver in the way I am most comfortable. Make sense? Okay. The other thing is be responsive. So, and again, we'll talk about it when we get into email etiquette. But we have to be responsive. So if somebody says something to us, either verbally, in written format, or by phone, by leaving it on an answering machine, then we just need to make sure we respond to that. Number 3 is to keep it brief, short, sweet, sound bites. I don't have it in this slide, but the average American listens and speaks at a 7th grade level. So, we don't need to have a long sentence that we want to say something. We need to keep it short and to the point. Communication strategies, be friendly, but even if you're in negotiations, it doesn't help you any to be negative or have a negative aura. Keep it organized. Know what you want to say, have a plan about what you're going to say. And again, it's not scripted so that you're reading a document, but rather it's something that you've organized your thoughts so that you get from point A to the end. Include all the necessary information up front. If you have a point that you want to make, don't speak 15 minutes and then at the very end it's like, so this is what I want you to do. Start with, this is what I want you to do, and then go into the why. Highlight the actions that need to be taken. Again, a great tool is to paraphrase. I know we spent 3 hours together, but let me just paraphrase what we just talked about so that you make sure that everybody is clearly aligned and on the same page. Respect privacy. It's really important. We haven't talked about it in this class, but Marion and I talk about the cone of silence, and whatever is said between two people in a conversation, the unwritten rule is it stays between the two people. And if there's a story in there and you heard it from someone else, it's not your story to tell. So it's important to respect privacy. And then read or practice before you speak. If you have an opportunity, especially in emails, to write it down, put it aside, and come back again, just to make sure that your message is clear. If you're going to be in a face-to-face conversation, know what it is that you want to say. And if it's really critically important, practice it beforehand. Okay, 9 points, all great points. I can't pick one out that's my favorite. All right, so things to remember. These communication strategies are just guides, both for verbal and written communication. Again, communication is a contract between two people, the sender and the receiver. We need to be clear on our message. We have to say what we mean. And if we don't know what something stands for or means, we need to ask. We're going to talk about that a little bit more. enough. All right, so let's talk about written communication. So jargon. I love this. This is my favorite part. Jargon. Jargon is special words or expressions that are used by particular professions or groups, and sometimes are difficult for other people to understand. And the reason that it's important for us to pay attention to jargon is because not everyone understands what they are that are born and bred in America, but we now have cultural differences. And so therefore, if you have a communication that you use that people are confused about, or somebody that's dyslexic. I don't know, again, this class isn't about dyslexia, but somebody that is dyslexic may hear these words and cannot visualize what they actually mean. So we have to be careful. It doesn't mean we don't use jargon. It just means that we have to think about how and why we use it. So I have a couple examples of some confusing words, and usually, like I wrote, dyslexic, or if you have a diverse cultural group that might get in the way. So, for example, and again, I've got 8 of or 9, 9 of 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 10 listed. Buy-in. We just need to get buy-in. Think about it. Somebody else may not understand what buy-in means. And again, you can read them all on the screen, but probably one of the ones that I use more often than I want to think about, and I try to stop myself, is it's a hard stop. Okay, we're going to have a hard stop at 7 o'clock. We're going to have a hard stop. Well, hard stop does not mean or does not translate with other cultures. So again, thinking about some of these, if you use them, I'm not saying stop, but pay attention to where you use them. And again, if you're reading somebody's body language and you use it, you may need to stop and kind of reword what it is that you're trying to say. So those were kind of fun 10 ones. I would be curious what you think you have as one of your go-to jargons. All right, so let's talk a little bit about acronyms. So what an acronym is a word formed from the initial letter or group of letters and pronounced as a word. Or it could just be a set of initials with each letter pronounced separately. So either way, it's taking a normal word that we would use and truncating it into a soundbite. So a couple of acronyms for the computers is, I don't know, maybe there's 10 listed again. Some of them we know and we use. Other of them, every time I see them, I'm like, I don't know what that means, and I have to go to Google. So probably the ones that I see most often is BTW, by the way, and LOL. So in my world, those are the two that I hear enough that I understand without having to think about what they mean. But think about other acronyms. So those are computer acronyms, but in our workplace, every organization has acronyms that they use. And if you're talking to somebody else within the organization, you might think, well, they're using it. I've used it. We've been working here together. But think about that new hire who doesn't know what that acronym means. Again, it gets in the way of understanding, and that becomes another example of noise. So if you have to use an acronym, if you have to, because, and again, I'm going to use an example of NOVA. I'm on the board of NOVA, which is Network of Victim Assistance. And so we call it NOVA. And everybody on the board obviously knows what NOVA is. But if you're going to be out in the public talking to other people, you can use your abbreviation and then explain what it is. I'm on the board of NOVA. NOVA is a Network of Victim Assistance. So if you use an acronym like MD, that's a managing director. I know you thought it was a doctor, but it's MD is the managing director at H&R Block. So again, think about your organizations or the people you work with, and are there acronyms that are being used that gets in the way of your communication message? Okay, so to remember, we need to be clear about our message. We have to say what we mean. Eliminate acronyms and jargon if at all possible. And if you use them, really take the time to explain what they are. And it's not explaining it one time and thinking you're done. Marion and I work for a company out in Harrisburg, and they are a bunch of engineers, and they have acronyms all over the place. And so, we'll be in a conversation. We've been working with them for 10 years now, and they'll say, whatever the acronym is, and then I'll say, I forgot what that is. And then they'll say it quickly because it is so natural to them to use it. And then they'll use it again the next time. And I'm thinking, all right, I remember what the A was, but I don't remember the rest of them. So again, if you are going to use the acronyms, make sure that you explain it more than one time. Okay. All right. So let's talk about weasel words. So I have an assessment for you. Weasel words. Don't Google search it. I want you to think about it. The question is, what are weasel words? Is it a series of words that are clear and concise? B, are they words that are vague and confusing? C, words that paint a picture? Or D, words that persuade someone in a clever way? Okay, A through D. Get that piece of paper and pencil, jot it down, tell me what your thoughts are. Well, you can't tell me, but we'll talk. All right, I'll tell you the answer at the end of our piece on weasels. All right, weasel word. To communicate more effectively, it's really a good idea to choose the words wisely. Something that would be not easily misunderstood, or something that you know for sure won't be interpreted in the wrong way. Okay, so weasel words. To communicate more effectively, it's a good idea to choose words that will not be easily misunderstood or can be interpreted in many ways. So clear and concise. If we're not clear and concise, we are bound to be using weasel words. So I put this sentence together and it has numerous weasel words in there. If you still have your piece of paper and pencil, why don't you just take some notes and jot down what you think some of those weasel words might be. So I'm going to read it to you. I have to move my picture, but I have to read it to you. We are probably going to change our procedure on this policy, depending on what we might implement to improve this situation. If time permits, we will send out what the boss wants us to do to find a new procedure on the changes that will be made. There will be several alternatives that we possibly can take. We will try to send out some kind of communication on the new procedures, hopefully in the next week or so. Sounds like a normal sentence, right? Well, embedded in here are numerous weasel words. I'm going to give you a second. I'm going to give you about a minute. I want you to look through it. What words take away or are not necessary in order for the message to be sent? Okay. All right, I'm going to give you the answer on the next page. So the answer is, ta-da! So the first one is probably. If we didn't have the word probably in there, it doesn't change the meaning at all. We are going to change our procedure versus we are probably going to change our procedure. Depending on what we might implement, vague and obtuse. If time permits, again, vague and obtuse, because we will send out a new procedure on the changes that will be made, clearly states what the message is. And then again, using the word possibly or probably, try to, and again, you can see all the answers here as to anything highlighted in red are words that are really unnecessary in order for the message to come through. Okay? So think about your world. Think about the words you use when you're trying to pass on a thought, a direction, or even writing an email. Do you have any weasel words? Okay? So think about it. Do you use weasel words? All right. So obviously the answer is words that are vague or confusing fall into the category of weasel words. All right, good. All right, so again, remember, be clear in your message. Say what you want to mean. Don't use words that aren't necessary. And if you don't know what something stands for or means, it's really important for you to ask. So if you did get a memo that had weasel words in it, you may want to make sure that you understand what does possibly mean? Those are questions that you can ask that will help the author of weasel words kind of think through what words they've chosen. All right, next, we're going to talk about emails. We all do it. We all get it. Here's an assessment. What is the last step you should take when writing an email? Easy answer, right? I'll give you 4 choices. You're opening. So what's the last step that you would take to write an email? What you open, your subject line, the email address of the receiver, or the CCs and BCCs. Okay, so the carbon copies and the blind copies. Okay, write it down. All right, so email etiquette, it's communication that doesn't have the filter of face-to-face. And what I mean by that is with face-to-face, you got to look in my eyes. You get to see me folding my arms over, like Jacqueline said a couple of weeks ago, folding my arms across my chest. The tapping of my foot, the possibility of looking at my smartphone instead of actually doing something. So you don't have that filter. So email etiquette is a little different than face-to-face. So it depends on your writing product to convey the message. So it's important for us to think about the tone that we put in the email, how we show respect to the person that we're writing to, and still put our personality in there. Every email does not have to be a template of looking like your neighbors and your neighbor's neighbors and your neighbor's neighbor's neighbor. So again, put your tone, make sure that there's your personality in there. And regardless of what your messaging is, there should be respect. Okay. Subject line. Let's talk about subject line first. Always use a subject line. Okay. If not, the person who's getting it will probably either not pay attention to it. If it's a business email that you're writing to someone, it will end up in spam or trash. And if you have companies that you're writing to, sometimes they have an external, when you get a response back, it'll say external. And that means that it went through some kind of firewall to get to the person that you're writing to. And if there's nothing in the subject line, then chances are that they'll fall into that spam or rejection mode. I made it bold here because make your subject line do the heavy lifting. Tell them what you're writing about. If it's about a job interview, for example, you make it exciting enough that they're going to want to open it up and read what you have to say. If it's about volunteering, sometimes it's good to ask a question, something that would just prompt somebody to kind of catch their eye. Remember, on average, people get 200 emails a day. So how do you get through the clutter? If it's time sensitive, what you're looking for a response by Friday at 3 o'clock, add that phrase to the subject line as well. So, for example, if you needed something for Sunday and it's Thursday, you can put time sensitive, or maybe it's just for your reference only. If somebody doesn't need to take action, put big and bold, for reference only, so that people know what they should be doing with this information. So again, make your subject line do the heavy lifting. And if it's got any kind of time sensitivity at all, it's okay to put that in there. As a matter of fact, you can even put emoticons in there, and we're going to talk about that. But subject lines. All right. So what greetings do you use for a friend in business and professional? And again, if we were in class, we would have a conversation about this. But do we do our greetings differently in the business setting, in a school setting, or with our friends? So how you start your email, what do you say? Everybody kind of has a go-to opening. Dear, hey there, greetings, miss, what's up, pal, hi, you. I'd love to know what some of your openings are. Regardless of how casual the email, there should still be an opening. So that's the protocol of email etiquette, is there some kind of opening. All right, so a couple acceptable, I have a couple in here that I wanted to just touch on it that are very acceptable and almost mainstream. When you're writing to somebody that you're really familiar with, the most popular is hi or hello. There's no handbook. I mean, I probably could write a handbook on what the ones that are good, bad, and ugly with acceptable openings. But again, the hi, seems to be standard, even in a business environment. If it's somebody that you don't know ever and you're trying to make a good impression, I'd probably stay away from hi, and I'd go with dear Sue or dear somebody, whoever it is that you're writing to. This is like I said, this is a very appropriate opening. if you don't know someone. If you knew me and you wrote me an email that we've had a relationship with, and said, "Dear Carlene," I'd be like, okay, it's some kind of formal, so it would cause noise in my head. So again, use dear because it's very acceptable, but use it, gingerly, especially if you have people that you have a business relationship, but they're also somebody that you know more than once. Okay, couple other ones. Greetings, good morning, good afternoon, good day. Um, uh, and then good day, Carlene, good day, Carly, good day, Jacqueline, good day, Namir, good Marion. So those are also acceptable openings. Hey, interesting one about hey. I found a group, just a small group of people that I have used hey with. And I never thought twice about it because I know them very, very well, and I'm trying to be very casual. And Marion and I had an interesting conversation of somebody that we both know who really has a pet peeve about you getting an email that starts with "hey." So again, know your audience, and just because you may feel comfortable using "hey," remember I talked about earlier is that we have to look at the other person's preference, because again, the reason that we're writing these emails is because we are expecting a response back. So you want to do everything to set up the opportunity for them to have a positive response back to you. So again, even though I really like hey, I now ask the people that I've been using hey with, hey, do you still think hey's okay? So just something to think about. All right, so let's talk about the content of your emails itself. First off, never, ever, ever, did I mention this? Ever use caps. And I know that uh, it's a silly reason, but over time, caps has been kind of categorized as shouting at someone. And so even if you're writing something because you want somebody to pay attention to it, there are other ways of doing it. So caps are a no-no. So just keep it, I mean, obviously you start your sentence with a cap, but don't use the entire email or a section of the email with cap. Again, remember we talked about in face-to-face, you can hear my tone or you could hear me laughing if I said something that I would have put in caps in an email. But in the email itself, I don't have the luxury of being able to look at your face and see the smile. So again, never use caps. Pay attention to typos. Oh my gosh. I don't know how many times I text and I go, oops. And there are now upgrades. I have just got the upgrade on my computer and it says we can fix your typos. But in the past, if you send something with a typo, then it was the typo. So if you're sitting in front of your computer and you're writing an email, double check to make sure that, just reread it to make sure that there are no typos in there or you're actually saying what you want to say. Again, in an email, use normal capitalization and punctuation. Commas are still appropriate. Periods at the end of a sentence are appropriate. And make sure that your grammar and spelling is correct. I know we have auto check, auto spell, which is sometimes fabulous, and sometimes they come up with words we never thought about. So making sure that we spell correctly and we are saying it in the appropriate sentence. If it's something that's really, really important that you want to get through to someone, I love Grammarly. It's a free app. I think you can pay for it too, but you can get a free app and you can type in whatever it is, and they will kind of check your grammar, check your punctuations, sometimes even giving you a suggestion on another way to say it. So again, depending on what the importance is of that message that you're sending out, that's another tool for you. Avoid long sentences. And again, Grammarly would check if you have a long sentence, but if you're not going through Grammarly, just pay attention to what you say and how many words you're saying. There could be some weasel words in there. So again, content is really important. When my first job out of college, I was working at an advertising agency and I worked for a guy that was in the newspaper business. And he taught me, I don't have any newspaper, oh, maybe this. He taught me in the newspaper business, the newspapers used to look like this. And I lived in Chicago at the time. So we had two different newspapers, one that was this way and that you would read, and one that was this way that you would read. So the Chicago Tribune was this way. Anything that you wanted to read should be above the fold. Okay. So what does that have to do with what we're talking about here? In an email, above the fold is above the scroll. Okay, so if really something is important, make sure that you say it above the scroll, because if it's really that important, somebody may never scroll down to actually see it. So just helpful. All right, so reply. All right, we wrote this great email, or somebody wrote a great email to you. What is the protocol on reply? Well, the return email should be in 24 hours or less in a business, if it's a business email. And if it's a personal email, you go 1 to 2 days. Okay. I will tell you that generationally, depending the Z generation, which is the 20-ish, 20 to 25-year-olds, sometimes don't check their emails at all. So again, pay attention to their preferences. Again, that's the person more personal. But if you're emailing somebody that really wants to communicate with text, make sure that you text them and say, I have an email in there for you. But from a business perspective, you should return emails in 24 hours as protocol. If by chance you get the email and you see it and there's work on your part that you have to do, then you can email back and say, I got to do some homework on this. I'll get back to you, and then tell them when you want to get back to them. So the response doesn't have to be the answer. The response could just be, hey, I got your email and I got to do some research on it. Or it's 4:45 and I'm leaving on vacation. I'll be gone for 2 weeks, so that the other person knows. So the protocol on any email, again, 24 hours or less, personal, 1 to 2 days or less. Okay. Oh my gosh, we sent it to the wrong person. You know how you go into the to line and you write MA, which is for Marion. That's how I start my emails to Marion. And sometimes Marianne, my sister, comes up and not Marion. So it's okay because she's my sister, but other names that might be in another company or another person, or another boyfriend or girlfriend, or significant other, you want to make sure that you put the right person's name in, because obviously once you send it, it's pretty much gone. Okay. All right. Your closers. So how do you currently close your emails? Okay. Some people say, I just hit send. And yes, we do hit send, but we do one thing before we hit send. Some of the best closers are out there. And again, you can Google anything, is, best or best regards, warm regards, thank you so much, take care. And again, depending on the relationship and the level of comfort you have with each other, the choice of how you close is important. Take care is I put it last, but it's my go-to. I tend to, my take on the people that I work with is that I really care that they take care. So it's a punctuation. My mom always ended hers with love, hugs, and blessings. And so that was her go-to closing. And so after she passed away, with family members, I write love, hugs, and blessings. So again, if you have something special that's meaningful to you and someone else, obviously you can close with that. All right, sincerely, throw that in a formal, old-fashioned, I wrote a letter and I'm mailing it to somebody. It's really kind of formal. So, obviously it's appropriate, but you usually don't use it in email, which is more of a casual form of communication. All right, so our signature. So we need to have a signature. You can have a sig block that is just got a blocked signature in there, or you can actually upload your signature in there. But if you don't have that, then at least type your name. So again, it ties it back to who it is that the email came from. So again, there's many ways of doing it. As a matter of fact, I got an email from somebody who gave me a sig block. I had never met her before, and it just happened the other day. And her she didn't have a signature, and her email address was Jessica Ann, and then down in the sig block it said Jessica Ann. So I was responding back, and I didn't know if her name was Jessica or Jessica Ann. So when I wrote her back, I said, hey, or I said, hi, Jessica, or would you prefer to be called Jessica Ann? Because there was no indication in the signature line what her name was. And she came back and said, only my mother calls me Jessica Ann. But think about it, you don't want to have, luckily it wasn't a formal, email, but make sure that your signature is clear so that when somebody does respond to you, they're responding to the name that you want to be responded to with. Okay. All right. So the answer to the self-assessment is, what is the last step that you should take when writing an email? The answer is the email address of the receiver. I know we like to start from the top and work our way down, but the truth be known is that you want to make sure that you write what you want to say. You confirm it says, what do you want to say? And then when all that is, perfect, put who it is that it's going to. And I'm sure you all had that as the answer. All right. So a couple of things to think about. Emails are public documents. They're public domain. People will see your email. For your eyes only is only interesting. It's on the internet. It lies in many, many places. It is available all the time. So again, be careful with what you write. Only include statements in the email that you can openly defend. Okay, and what I mean by that is you want to make sure that what you say isn't going to come back to bite you. You know, there was some stupid TV show I was watching the other day, and somebody was being accused of murder, and she said, "I never said, I'd kill you." It had something to do with the boyfriend, and I'll kill you. And they said, "Well, we have an email that says I'm going to kill you because you cheated on me." And the answer was, "Well, I didn't mean that." Well, so you have to make sure that you say what you mean and it's something that you can defend. Again, any electronic communication provided by your organization, this is really important to pay attention to this. If your organization gives you a laptop or a desktop or a tablet, and you are communicating to a phone, anything that you've got that's electronic and it belongs to the company, everything you write belongs to the company. Okay? Really important. If you're writing a book, if you're writing a paper for school, it all belongs to the company. It doesn't matter that you're not doing it on company time. It's their equipment. So again, just pay attention, think about what it is that you write, and keep that in mind. Okay, attachments. We all have a time and time again to attach something. Companies have firewalls, and sometimes it can't get through a firewall, so pay attention to what you're attaching. If it's a necessary attachment, then make sure that it is, you make sure that the person can accept it, because you might send it, it's going to be in their spam folder, or they may never receive it. So if you receive an attachment by somebody that you don't know, and there's a lot of spam out there, never open it. Okay, so be judicious about sending attachments. There are so many other ways. If you have big files that you can move around, they have Dropbox, there's OneDrive, I think it's called. So there's other ways that you can move material around. But again, pay attention to what you attach. And again, viruses can crash an entire system. So companies are very careful about emails that come in, and especially attachments. And then large attachments, Marion and I use Apple, and Marion doesn't. And so therefore, sometimes it says it's got to go in a mail drop because the files are so big. So again, you need to pay attention on what the person on the other side has to do with the attachments that you send. Okay, so let's talk about sensitive issues. The more serious the message, the less appropriate an email becomes. So that again, the more serious the message, the less appropriate it is to send it in the email. So examples would be disciplinary action, personal information, you don't want to put your social security number in there, concerns about fellow workers, or a complaint. So those are pretty serious, again, high level topics that need to be addressed, but having it put in an email sometimes will come back. Again, we talked a couple slides earlier about things that come back that you may have to defend. So again, if somebody's asking you to write up somebody's performance issues, if you're working with an HR department, you need to talk to them about it if you want to get notes. But again, not that you can't email, but you need to pay attention to the emails because again, it's out in the cyber world. So again, sensitive issues, think about it. The more serious, the less appropriate. All right, let's talk about emoticons and emojis. I got examples of both. Emojis are obviously the little pictures that, again, in Word, I can put, I got a little, on my toolbar, an emoji choice, and I can pick whatever you want to put down. And emoticons, you just use the keyboard to write it up. The question that I'm always asked is, can I use it? And the answer is, it depends. It depends if your organization uses it. And so your question then would be, well, how would I know? Well, typically, if you, sometimes there's a manual, so policy and procedure, P&P, could be a place to go. The other place is follow the lead of somebody that's in another level above you. If they send something with an emoticon or an emoji, then that pretty much gives you permission to do so. But I personally like to ask. So again, each company is different. Sometimes law firms, tax businesses don't readily jump to emojis or emoticons. So pay attention to the industry that you're in. Take your lead from other people, or if unsure, ask. I will tell you that over time, that more and more companies have accepted emojis from the time we started researching it to now, is that one emoji seems to be a general rule of acceptance. So if you write something, and I understand the argument about why emojis are important because, again, when you do an email, you lose that face-to-face filter. The filter of being able to communicate with face-to-face is limited. So if you say something harsh, but you really kind of want to wink, this gives you an opportunity to do the wink. But maybe it's better that you reword what it is that you said. And if you do use an emoticon or an emoji, that maybe it's just one. So again, you need to think about it. You need to look at the organizations that you work with, and again, it's okay because you want to do the right thing. And again, etiquette in every company is a little different. All right, so a couple things to remember. Email is communication without the filters of face-to-face, okay? So our frowns, our smiles, our body language, our gestures are lost when we email somebody. We need to make sure that our subject line is descriptive. That's got to give me a clue. It's got to give me a hook to open up the email. Hello or dear are popular openings. Again, dear for the more formal situation, and hello or hi as you're more familiar. Never use caps. We talked about that. The last thing you put in your email is the address of the recipient, and that a lot of us are going to have to rethink because again, we start at the top and work our way down. I'm going to write Marion an email. Marion. I'm going to put my subject in, and then I'm going to put my content, and I put my signature. But we have to rethink that to make sure that we start with the subject line and then end with the email address. Okay, popular closes, best, all the best regards. My favorite, take care. And be careful about how we use emojis or emoticons. Okay, so last part, verbal. We are going to be done before an hour and 10 minutes is up. Pretty sure of it. So now I've set expectations. All right, verbal. A quiz, the final self-assessment. What is the #1 business etiquette faux pas? Have your phone ring during a meeting and taking the call. Not responding to email in 24 hours. Being late. And if sitting, not getting up when introduced to or shaking hands with the business associate. Now you'll notice that these incorporate things that we've talked about today, as well as things we talked about in the other sessions. As we start moving towards capstone, I figured we should have an opportunity to talk about some of the other things to make sure that we remember what it is that we learned. Okay, #1 business etiquette faux pas. See, I wish we were face to face. As a matter of fact, this might be a fun thing to do. Take this question when you're at Thanksgiving meal and ask. I'd be interested to see what some of the responses are. I'll give you the answers. All right, so some verbal tips. And again, we didn't spend a lot of time on verbal because we've embedded it in all of the other pieces of today. But when you talk to somebody, we need to be authentic. Be you. And again, each of you are individual. Each of you bring tremendous amount to the table. Just be yourself, and we'll be ourselves. And that's okay. We can have different approaches. We can have different styles. But if you try to be me or I try to be you, then we're not truly being authentic, and people can see through that. Number two is our attitude is everything. So I think we talked about this in week one, is fake it until you make it. So your attitude is, all right, you can't be, they're not going to like me because I never finished college. They're not going to like me because whatever. Get that all out of your head. Your attitude is your attitude, and it's everything. So, if you feel insecure, you need to not show it. Have a good attitude. I'm going to meet somebody new. I am going to write my emails differently. I'm going to present myself at a networking event. I'm going to look at context. But your attitude, so sorry, is really important. Pay attention to your body language. We talked about it first impressions, and we talked a little bit about it here. Focus on how you walk into a room, how you approach people, how you look at people in the eye. So pay attention not only to yours, but take the cues of how other people are responding to you. Okay? So focus on body language, and it goes both ways. Keep it professional. Doesn't matter if you have a new starting relationship with somebody that you met at a business event or somebody in the business environment that you have known for years. It's still important to keep it professional at all times. And the reason why I think this is really important is I spent a lot of years working for H&R Block, and there were 4 senior leaders above my level. And the 4 senior leaders were all really good friends. There was, whoever the president was at the time, the 4 leaders were there probably 7 or 8 years together. They worked on projects. They went through, fire drills. They did everything, making decisions for their territories, but they still worked together in synergy. And one of the leaders, and again, they were all very, very good friends, and one of them started to talk about somebody that they were not sure would be a great next leader up the organization. Suddenly, the president leaves the organization, and that person that they were talking about actually became the new president. Okay, so think about it. So you say something off the cuff to somebody like, "Oh yeah, you'd want to be president of H&R Block. You can do more. You can do more. You can do more valuable work if you stayed at this level." And you know what? Nobody wants, like, whatever the information is, and the next thing you know, that person who you thought was your peer is now your boss. So again, keep it professional at all times. You always want to make sure that the relationship is open and above board and honest. Use the appropriate tone of voice. We didn't talk about paraphrasing at all because, again, this was only an hour and a half or less session. But how we choose the way we say things is really important. So make sure our tone is correct. And sometimes we say things and then we explain ourselves. Take a breath and just say it. Say it with the right tone and the right intonation, and be done. Put a period at the end of it. And the last thing, which this class has no discussion about at all, but really critically important, is we can't forget to listen. Okay, so we talked about email. We talked about how do we communicate. We talked about it's a two-way street. But the part of the two-way street is that I need to say something, and then the person that I'm talking to or writing to has to say something back. We have to pay attention to it. Okay. There are clues in what everybody says back to you for an opening to carry on the conversation deeper, to have a more robust relationship. And a great example would be, I was talking to somebody a couple weeks ago, and they made a comment, and I said, "Oh yeah, I know that the world has changed over there. They're now 100% hybrid." And the answer was, "Oh, okay." I just gave away the store. The question that you should be thinking is, how do you know that? Okay. Remember, we talked about networking. If somebody listened to what I said, their response back is, how do you know that they're all 100% hybrid? And the answer would have been, I've been working with them for 9 years. Bam. That would have been a great networking opportunity. So pay attention to things that people say and ask questions back. It's okay. That's called communication. And it's a two-way street. So don't forget to listen and then react. All right. So the answer to self-assessment is being late. Yep. Being late. Why do you think that is? So I know that there are people that have 1,000 things pulling at them, kids, bus lines, subway rides, car problems, weather issues, an accident on the road. But all of those things are about you. And if you're meeting me, it doesn't matter. Okay. And I'm using me as an example. But if you're meeting somebody at a luncheon, then, and it's especially if it's the first time you're meeting somebody, get there early, pay attention, know the road, have somebody else pick up your kid from school, have somebody else babysit, have an alternative route, get, ways so that if you have an accident that you have to deal with, so that you're not cutting it close. Like if I leave now, I'll be there at exactly 12 o'clock because 9 times out of 10, something will get in the way. And the people that you're meeting, especially in the business environment, that impacts their impression. It may not impact their first impression, but it will impact their impression. And again, the 10 years never, ever, ever being late and then being late one time, it's called a halo effect, which is like, you know what? I've known her for 10 years and she's never been late. We meet once a month for 12 months times 10 years. So she's late once. But usually we don't have that luxury. So pay attention, make sure that we pay attention to when we leave and when we get there. And then if by chance you're late, don't grovel. Oh, the traffic was horrible. The dog ate my homework. Nobody needs to hear, everybody will be polite about it and they'll listen to you. But in the back of their mind, they're thinking, you know what, why didn't you leave earlier? So again, talk about impressions and continuous relationships, making sure that we're not late is critically important. All right, so let's talk about lessons learned and homework. As always, in the reflections discussion, you're going to answer the question, what foundation skills do you need to develop to further become proficient in this? Okay, that's fancy words, but basically it means is, what did you learn in our hour-ish today that you can work on to become better at how you currently communicate, be it by phone, be it by email, or be it face-to-face? We'd love to hear what you have to say. The instructions as to when you should post it, I think, well, I know for sure they're in Blackboard, but what you want to do is you want to make sure you post it, as quickly as possible so that other people can comment on it. And those are always fun discussions to read and view. And then the last thing is the homework assignment. Again, it's Blackboard under week 5. There's some scenarios there. List a couple of them, at least 3, and respond and post. So with that, I would love to say, what questions do you have? Well, I'm still going to say, what questions do you have? But what I will say is that you go to start here in Blackboard in the class, you will see both Miriam's contact information and my contact information. And we would love to hear what your thoughts are, if you have any questions. If there's anything between now and the time that we get back into our 5th, 6th class, please just send us a note or a text and we will get back to you. So with that, I want to thank you. Our time together was only an hour. It was jam-packed with a lot of information. I'm sorry that we didn't have a two-way communication on this very important topic. But again, feel free to email us, ask questions, tell us what your answers were. If there's something that you would like to see in here that we haven't put in here, please also share that information. Your feedback is vitally important. So with that, I want to thank you for your time. I want to thank you for your attention. I want to thank you for being part of our class. And I wish you a very happy Thanksgiving. And I'll see you soon. Bye.